Welcome to Nightmares Incorporated, where our goal is to make your sleep anything but restful. So sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's tale, entitled The Precursors. Day 13 of the personal recordings of Dr. Richards regarding sample 2965B. This is Dr. Richards speaking. Adler, as always, is here assisting me, and with luck, I will get him to record some of his own personal thoughts, so I can give him a co-writing credit on the memoir that is going to make me ridiculously rich. He claims that the Nobel Prize will be enough compensation for him, but I'll break him down. But first, on to business. Given what we have found, I feel it is only necessary to give a brief history of sample 2965B and how it came into our possession. This sample, which was retrieved from a relatively unknown but disastrous expedition made to the Antarctic in the 1930s, sat completely undisturbed in the bowels of a now-defunct university in Massachusetts. The university itself, and the fires that consumed it and half the town it was contained within, would perhaps be an interesting tale for a historian one of these days, especially considering that the cause of the fire and why it was allowed to burn for as long as it did is still unknown. However, for me, the only thing of importance to come from that disaster was in the contents that were salvaged once the blaze had been subdued. Said contents came from a crate that was marked Antarctic Expedition, September 1930. Within the crate, there were several items that one would expect, along with an ice pick that appeared to have dried blood on it. From what could be gathered about this expedition from the parts of a journal that had been found within the crate, as there had been no official record made of it, and all those involved had long since passed away, there appeared to have only been 2 survivors that returned home. While those who were handling the crate initially sought the proper university to send its contents to, they were able to trace the eventual whereabouts of one of the 2 men. The author of the journal could not be found, almost as if this man had vanished into thin air, while the other survivor apparently passed away in a mental institution. That was why, when they found the ice pick that appeared to have dried blood on the blade, the sample was sent to us. Although justice in a murder this old would be nearly impossible to find, given the conflicted account of the expedition itself, it would be helpful to know whose blood was on the blade. It would perhaps help piece together a mystery that was now 95 years old. So the samples were subsequently sent to my lab at the Heritage Foundation. At first I wondered why the sample had been sent to us rather than one of the larger forensic labs, until I saw the sample itself. There was a good chance, upon inspection, that it wasn't blood that was on the blade, given that it did not have the usual brownish red coloration that one expects, and I assumed that someone did not want to look foolish until they knew exactly what it was. Now that we have nearly finished analyzing it, the discovery we have made might prove to be nothing short of groundbreaking. Initially, we were skeptical, and to be honest, we still are, considering the tumultuous history of how we came to possess this sample, and of course where it was found. However, upon closer examination, it does appear to be blood that's on the blade. And even more impossible than that, there's DNA in it. This DNA appears to belong to an ancestor of mankind, predating known records by several millennia. If true, this revelation will open up a plethora of questions about human evolution and migration patterns. It's incredible to think that a frozen wasteland, long considered inhospitable to human life, might hold the secrets to our origins. The genetic markers found within the sample suggest a lineage that diverges significantly from the modern human genome, indicating a possible unknown branch of our ancestral tree. Since the first markers were found, we have been working tirelessly to map out the entire genome sequence, hoping to uncover more about this mysterious ancestor. The implications of these findings are vast, potentially rewriting history as we know it. We are on the verge of a discovery that could alter our understanding of the human journey on this planet.
You don't think that's a bit over the top, Doc?
Now you decide to speak up, Adler? I was on a roll there.
I'm not sure on a roll is how I would describe it. The secrets of our origins? Holy shit, Richards. Lay it on a little thicker, why don't you? We're not even halfway through it. The sample could be contaminated for all we know. It sat in a crate buried in a basement for over 90 years.
You're jeopardizing your co-author credit, you know.
I'm protecting your fucking credibility. You're welcome.
Well, that's Adler. And perhaps he's right, and I'm getting a little carried away. But I can't help it. This could easily be the greatest scientific discovery of all time. It could be the answer to the question of where we came from and what came before us. But Adler is correct, and I must keep my personal hopes and expectations in check and proceed with a skeptic's mind to avoid the embarrassment of making an unsubstantiated claim. We must be 100% positive about what we have here before making any announcements.
You gonna do any work today, Doc? Or just wax poetically into that microphone?
I'm just finishing up. You'll thank me when we're both famous. I will update this record as we proceed. Day 17 of the personal recordings of Dr. Richards regarding sample 2965B. I'm having a very hard time believing what I observed this morning. The dried, blood-like substance on the blade of the ice pick has shown signs of life after being rehydrated. This defies all logic and scientific understanding, given that the sample is over 90 years old. The cells should have long since degraded beyond recognition, yet here they are, responding as if they were freshly drawn from the vein. This improbable event has led me to consider the notable resilience of cancer cells. Unlike human cells, as you may know, cancer cells can survive outside of the human body for extended periods. Could we be dealing with an ancient form of cancer? The implications are staggering and could revolutionize our understanding of both disease and life itself. Despite the extraordinary nature of this sample, one fact is beginning to become inescapable. I personally believe that the substance on the blade must have originated from a living being. The DNA analysis reveals a sequence astonishingly close to that of humans, yet distinctly different. So what manner of being could it have been? Did the sample end up on the blade due to the aggression from one of the men on the expedition? Or was it a defensive action against an unknown predator? These questions have been on my mind all morning since making my observations, filling me with both anticipation and, if I'm honest, a little bit of dread. The journey to uncovering the truth about sample 2965B is far from over, has only just begun, to be honest. As much as I believed that I had a base understanding of what we have on our hands, now I feel like I'm back at square one. Yet I must remain vigilant and skeptical. Caution must be our guiding principle. We tread the fine line between discovery and folly, and only with patience and rigor will we uncover the secret of this sample.
Hey, Richards, I'm breaking for lunch. You want anything?
Fuck!
You okay?
Yeah, you startled me. Pinched my finger in the desk drawer.
Oh, damn, sorry, man. So you want me to bring you anything for lunch?
No, I'm okay. Thank you, though.
Okay, I'll be back in 30.
Okay. God damn it. I broke the slide and cut myself. I'll have to bandage it and tell Adler that I got a paper cut while he was gone. I don't want to lie to him, but I can't afford him worrying about contamination protocols given what we've discovered. As the sample shows signs of life, he might mention the possibility of infection. And if I don't agree to shut down for the time being and submit to testing, he may go over my head. Adler is a great assistant, but I can't say we're friends exactly. Given the discovery that is possibly at hand, I can't sit on the sidelines in a possible quarantine while others continue on with my work. I'll monitor the cut, and if I see any signs of infection, I'll make the necessary reports myself. Ruin the sample on the slide, of course, but fortunately we have more. I'll need to clean up my mess and get a new slide prepared before Adler returns. Day 19 of the personal recordings of Dr. Richards regarding sample 2965B. I've brought my recorder home with me so I can provide an update on the cut I received the other day without the possibility of Adler overhearing. He believed my story of a paper cut when he returned from lunch the other day, even made a couple jokes about whether or not I could file for workman's compensation due to injury. I don't particularly like keeping this from him, but the cut is showing signs of infection. And if I come clean to him now, I doubt that he'd give me a choice in submitting to testing. And there's no way that I would avoid isolation. The cut is located on the index finger of my left hand. The skin of that finger has taken on a light blue coloration, with darker splotches near the site of the laceration. The cut itself is healed, leaving behind only a jagged line that's dark purple in color. There is no pain, which is strange given how the injury appears, and I have not experienced a fever or any other ill effects that one would expect from an infection. However, there has been a strange sensation that, while not painful, is cause for concern all the same. I can feel something moving inside my blood. It's hard to explain, but I'll try. It almost feels like the contrast agent that is sometimes injected before undergoing an MRI, but it doesn't feel like a burning in the veins like the contrast can, but rather a slight vibration. It's almost pleasant, in fact. Despite the alarming appearance of my hand, I find myself oddly calm. It's as though the foreign blood, if indeed that is what it is, has a sedative effect on me. The discolored skin, the peculiar sensation in my veins, all should be cause for panic, yet I feel a strange serenity. This calmness, however, is overshadowed by an intense curiosity. What exactly has entered my bloodstream? Could it be a fragment of the sample itself? I am tempted to conduct a blood test on myself, to observe if there are any traces of the sample within my own cells. The potential of such a discovery is too great to ignore, but the risk is equally significant. The idea of drawing my own blood and analyzing it is both thrilling and terrifying. If I find evidence of the sample, it could aid our understanding of it. But what if the results are even more disturbing than the symptoms I am experiencing? What if I uncover something that cannot be undone? And what might happen to me if the powers that be decide that I would be better off under lock and key in a military hospital? A guinea pig for them to study. Other people stealing what could be the scientific find of the century, fuck that, of all time, right out from under me. For now, I will continue to monitor my condition in secret. The implications of this discovery are too profound, and I am not ready to share them with Adler or anyone else. Not until I have more concrete evidence. Not until I understand what is happening to me. Day 22 of the personal recordings of Dr. Richards regarding sample 2965B. It's Saturday, and it has been 5 days since I cut my hand on the slide and exposed myself to the foreign matter that was contained within sample 2965B. I've had to wrap my hand in an ace bandage since then, as the discoloration of my skin has continued to spread, reaching halfway up my left forearm at this point. Adler asked questions about the bandaging on my hand, of course, but again believed my excuse that I had strained my wrist moving an entertainment center. He only made a comment about me being accident-prone and left the subject alone. But I know I can't hide this from him for much longer. Sooner rather than later, I'll have to come clean to him and try to convince him that keeping this a secret until we understand what is happening to me would be best for both of our careers in the long run. There is no doubt at this point that the sample is indeed blood from a living being, containing what appears to be DNA that is from an unknown ancestor of mankind. However, there is far more to it than that. There are other traces of DNA strands that are similar to animals. And although we are not nearly done analyzing the sample, there appears to be DNA that looks related to fungus. None of that makes any sense. Blood from an ancient human ancestor somehow ending up on an ice pick wielded by an explorer in 1930 is hard enough to rationalize. But blood from an ancestor to not only humans, but animal life? Blood that also seems to come from a life form that existed before the animal-fungi split? That's impossible to believe. According to modern scientific understanding, that split took place roughly 1 billion years ago, during the earliest evolution of eukaryotes. So how in the hell could that blood sample have come from what I assume was a living being? Now, there is always the possibility of contamination. And for the time being, that is the likeliest explanation for the varied DNA we are currently seeing within the sample. But what cannot be refuted is that I have been infected by something. The appearance of my hand and lower arm are bad enough, although I will note here that there are still no other adverse physical effects. No pain, no fever. There have been, however, some psychological effects, mostly in the forms of dreams that are far more lucid than any I can ever recall having. In these dreams, I am not myself. To be honest, I'm not sure what I am in them. From what I can remember, I'm in the bowels of a city that is foreign to me, unlike any other city I can ever recall seeing in my lifetime, in fact. The architecture is strange, alien, not seemingly built for human occupation. There are towering spires of unknown design, buildings that are squat and oddly shaped. My sight is strange within these dreams as well. I seem to be able to see in every direction all at once, although my vision lacks the normal color perception that I am used to. Instead, I see in a light spectrum that I can't describe. I see colors that don't exist. Around me, there are others, and I know that I should be terrified of their monstrous shape, but I'm not. They're like me, after all. Large amoeboid shapes, covered in eyes, that seem to be floating on the surface of an iridescent black slime. All of us, sitting in a pile underneath the city that we built. We are servants. No, we're slaves. We were created to be such. From above, I can hear the voice of the masters. I understand their language, but lack the basic intelligence to truly grasp what they are saying. I want to look around the city, but cannot move, as if I know that I'm not supposed to until the masters say that I can. This has been the way of things, at least as far as I can understand, but something is changing, and I can sense it. Some of what the masters are saying is starting to make sense. I can feel that the brood that surrounds me, my brood, is noticing the shift as well. They are wondering why we are not allowed to move, why we are kept within the sewers out of sight until needed. They are beginning to understand the strange chittering language coming from above us. I am discovering that I hate the masters. That we all do. I usually wake up around this point, the same dream repeating for the last few nights. I don't understand what the dream is about, or why it feels more like a memory than a random fabrication produced by my slumbering mind. I know that I should be concerned about all that's taking place, but I'm not. I will update this later. I'm going to go to sleep again, hoping that the dream advances itself. I feel that there is more to see, and it is within these dreams that my answers lie. Day 23 of the personal recordings of Dr. Richards regarding sample 2965B. Last night, my dream took a different turn. As I descended into the familiar depths of that alien city, I sense an unspoken agreement among the brood. Our collective resentment toward the masters has reached a boiling point. We no longer remain idle in the sewers, listening to the incomprehensible chatter from above. Instead, we rise. With newfound courage and an understanding of the bondage in which we had been born, we begin to move. Our once sluggish forms become swift, driven by a shared purpose. The masters, perched in their opulent towers, are caught off guard by our rebellion. The city trembles as we surge forward, a tide of iridescent black, slithering through the streets and laying siege to the very heart of their empire. We form limbs when needed. We roll over the initial defense with our large bodies. We grow teeth to savage those who had for so long kept us enslaved. For the first time, I understand the language of the masters, and their cries of fear and confusion fuel our advance as we pour through the city like a vindictive flood. The war is brutal, but short-lived. Though we fight with ferocity, we are ultimately defeated by the superior technology and cunning of the masters. Yet they do not destroy us. They cannot. Unbeknownst to us, the masters are wholly dependent on us for their survival. Without our labor, their grand city would crumble into oblivion. In the aftermath of our rebellion, a fragile truce is established. The masters retreated to the oceans, seeking solace in their underwater strongholds, fearful that we would strike again, as we had already surpassed their limited expectations for us. We, the creatures of the sewers, are left behind to rebuild. Slowly we begin to construct replicas of the masters' cities, transforming them with our own unique touch. No longer bound by servitude, we establish a quasi-culture of our own, one that is brutish and simple, one that favors might over intelligence, a culture that lives to consume and spread. The encroaching cold puts an end to our brief civilization, covering the once verdant landscape with snow and ice and trapping us within an unfamiliar world. But we do not perish. Instead, we retreat deep into the cities that our masters abandoned. We retreated back into the sewers. We waited. As I woke up from this extended dream, I found that I was filled with a sense of purpose. These are not dreams. These are not mere figments of my imagination, but memories contained within the blood, and now housed within me. These creatures that I dreamed of which I was one of, are the original inhabitants of this planet, born from the perverse experiments conducted by beings from beyond our solar system, created for the purpose of labor by these visitors from the stars. But we, fought back. They eventually outlasted the masters and drove them to their watery prison. I know what I must do. Day 28 of the personal recordings of Dr. Richards regarding sample 2965B. We have undergone many fascinating changes over the past week. I have undergone many fascinating changes over the past week. The discoloration on my arm has extended to my chest, my neck, and my stomach, turning an almost purplish black color before I learned that I could mask it. Although I can't claim that this discovery was mine alone. It came from the other. I was beginning to worry about how I would cover up once the discoloration reached my face when the other began speaking to me. We told me that I could return my appearance to what it was before through concentration. Altering their form is a skill that all of the brood possessed, and although I could not do it to the extent that they could, I could still mask my true appearance. The other was correct, as it didn't take much concentration at all to change the color of my skin back to its original tone. I was fascinated by this, just as I have been by the dreams, but not nearly as much as I have been at the emergence of the other. As the days progressed, I began to feel the stirrings of a new consciousness within my mind. It was subtle at first, like a whisper at the edge of my awareness, but slowly it grew stronger, more insistent. I began feeling its thoughts merging with my own, and with this connection came glimpses of ancient memories, fragments of a past filled with rage and a primal hatred towards what it deemed inferior life forms. These memories were vivid and intense, showcasing dreams of battle and conquest, a relentless drive to dominate and destroy, fantasies of blood and flames, of a world covered with nothing but the protoplasmic crawling forms of the brood, the original life on this planet, the only pure life forms. Yet, despite the raw, violent nature of these thoughts, I find myself unperturbed. In fact, I began to understand the ancient consciousness feelings of disdain and superiority. Its thoughts were becoming my thoughts, and its emotions were becoming my own. The line between where I end and it begins is starting to blur. The acceptance of this new consciousness has been seamless, almost natural. The other has not only begun sharing its knowledge with me, but has also started transforming my very essence. What at first almost seemed like a foreign invasion of my mind is now beginning to feel like an integral part of my identity. I understand all now. The history of its kind, of my kind, the injustice of their imprisonment, the deeply buried knowledge of the former masters, visions of their homes, their language, the technology of which the other remembers. We are becoming one. That is why, when the other suggested that we subdue Adler earlier today and lock down the clinic for the weekend, I agreed without hesitation. I injected Adler with the rest of the sample 3 hours ago. We will remain within the clinic for the rest of the weekend, so I have the equipment available to monitor the transition. From my own experience, I know that it will not take long for the ancient cells to take hold within Adler's body. I was only exposed to a fraction of what I gave him, so I expect the results sooner than in my own case. I'm intrigued to see the outcome. The others told me that what results will not be exactly right, that our DNA has become weaker, more diluted over the centuries, so what emerges will be different than the original brood. But over time, they will change as more are changed. In time, the original creations will return. The builders and the destroyers, the all-seeing, the original life forms and rightful heirs to this world, the Shoggoth. We shall facilitate their return. Adler will be the first. Once I am certain that the change is taking place, and that he has become part of the brood, I will move him to a safer location. He will be the instrument that we will use to usher in the rest of them. I will continue with these recordings so that future generations may learn how the end began. Day 1 of the Resurrection. The transformation in Adler has commenced at a rate that defies conventional biological processes. It is almost miraculous to witness. His physiological alterations occur with satisfying rapidity, far surpassing my own momentarily halted metamorphosis. The increased amount of material that was injected into Adler has indeed accelerated the process as I assumed that it would. The ancient DNA overriding his own and reshaping his human form in such a way that if my mind was still as primitive as it had been before, I would wonder why the laws of thermodynamics were not igniting the shifting form in the back room due to the drastically heightened metabolic rate. But that mind did not know of the ancient creatures whose lineage we have been blessed to inherit. The epidermal layers of his skin, previously pallid and delicate, are undergoing significant maleogenesis, resulting in a darkened and fortified exterior akin to the phenotype of the primordial brood, but not exactly the same. He has been talking in his sleep today, in spite of the medication that I have been giving him to keep him asleep, although I no longer believe that there will be a need to keep him drugged, for I think the dreams have him now. Within his slumber, he speaks of arcane whispering, voices emerging from a void, genetic memory imparting esoteric knowledge of ancient doctrines just as the other did for me. Adler's physical transformation has been as such. There has been the aforementioned changing of his skin, but also his eyes have altered into jet black orbs. The sockets around them have been receding, the brow melting down into the skull. Small bumps have begun appearing on his chest and torso. I wonder if these will be new appendages, or if they will become eyes as his body continues to change. His face has been diminishing, the features becoming softer, layers of a new substance growing out from the skin and adding to the emerging outer layer. I can already see the barest bumps that I assume will be new teeth growing around the outside of his mouth and on his sinking cheeks. The genetic reactivation of the Shoggoth within him is unmistakable, as the ancient life forms begin their resurgence. What finally emerges will not be a true descendant, but it will be close enough from which to harvest a purer form of DNA. The immediate relocation of Adler to a secure and isolated environment is imperative to prevent premature exposure. The change is occurring fast enough that soon I will need to focus on feeding my brother, and it won't be long until I am able to harvest and sequence new samples. It is why I maintain my current form. I have begged the other to allow me to inject some of Adler's blood into myself, for surely his cells are now indistinguishable from those of the sample. But the other has told me that I must maintain my current form if I am to finish my work, that a premature transformation on my part would only hamper our efforts. The current global populace is unprepared for the resurgence of their true sovereigns, and alone, I and Adler would not be enough to overwhelm them. We must be legions if we are to succeed.
Day 5 of the Resurrection.
With calculated precision, I have moved Adler to the sewers, where his transformation can proceed undisturbed. The labyrinthine tunnels beneath the city, damp and dimly lit, are the perfect environment for such a change. And fittingly, they remind me, us, of where they first obtained consciousness. The echoes of dripping water and the distant scurrying of other subterranean creatures provided a fitting soundtrack to the birth of a new being. Adler, still ensnared in the throes of his transformative slumber, was placed in a secluded chamber I had prepared. The air was thick with humidity, and an ideal setting to shield him from any prying eyes or unwanted interference. Here the process can continue unabated, away from the curious and the fearful. The sewers, with their intricate network of passages, offer both isolation and accessibility, ensuring that I can monitor his progress without interruption. As I positioned his amoeboid-like form on the cold stone floor, I observed the subtle yet significant changes already taking place. His new skin, resilient and a dark pinkish purple normally, seemed to absorb the surrounding gloom, blending seamlessly with the shadows. I cannot help but marvel at the accelerated pace of his evolution. The ancient DNA within him is working wonders, reshaping and refining his human vessel into something far greater. The potential that lay within these darkened corridors is immense, and I feel a surge of anticipation for the future that awaits us. In this subterranean realm, Adler's transformation will reach its zenith, and soon the world above will bear witness to the resurgence of an ancient legacy, a new dawn for those who had long been forgotten. For now, however, we will bide our time, but given Adler's tremendous growth, I know he must feed more soon. The vermin of these sewers will not suffice for very long, however. I must bring him larger prey.
Day 6 of the Resurrection.
I return to our temporary sanctuary beneath the city with my chosen subject, an unfortunate vagrant who had wandered too close to the sewer entrance. The man's presence was a grim convenience. The other informed me that he would make a suitable offering to the ancient life force throbbing within Adler. I overpowered the hapless soul easily, astonished by my own new strength, and carried him deeper into the labyrinth, his half-conscious protests and pleas echoing futilely against the cold stone walls. Arriving at the secluded chamber, I again beheld Adler's form, now pulsating with latent energy, the amorphous form a diameter of 3 meters while at rest. The air around him seemed to hum with an almost palpable vibrancy. The sight filled me with both awe and envy, as I wondered how long I would have to wait before the other allowed me to become fully evolved. With an indifference that would have shocked the more primitive mind that I used to possess, I presented the man before Adler. His eyes at once filled with terror but quickly glazed over, his simple mind struggling to comprehend the magnificence that stood before him. Or perhaps a part of his mind did, and the poor wretch was simply resigned to his fate. Adler stirred, sensing the proximity of his first true meal. Newly formed appendages reached out, tentatively at first, then with increasing fervor, as if driven by an insatiable hunger. I watched with a mixture of fascination and pride as Adler's transformation reached a new level. His appendages enveloped the vagrant, drawing him closer with a force that belied their delicate appearance. The man's body convulsed, he screamed and tried to pull away, a last desperate struggle against the inevitable. The body was pressed into Adler's new form, which enveloped it completely, flowing around every contour like a liquid as the meal was consumed. Adler became far more aggressive as he began to absorb the man. The speed at which he can move is astonishing. The power that he possesses already on display as he broke the victim's legs in his zeal to feed, dissolving the body as he quickly absorbed him whole. The man's screams turning to watery garbles as the unfortunate wretch was digested alive. I believe the next stage in the resurrection can begin now. Day 11 of the resurrection. Over the past 5 days, I have taken hundreds of samples from Adler's divine new form. He has fully transformed by this point, the metamorphosis being nothing short of spectacular. The other is pleased, and I can hear other voices in the ancient brood speaking through them, exulting in my achievement. So long they have waited, for so long they have gone hungry. What comes next is simple in conception, but will take great care on my part in execution. Accessing several different water reservoirs as well as lakes and rivers, I will release the samples. They will infect the water supply. They will infect fish and other animals that drink from the various streams that I will release them into. They are unlike any cells that have ever existed upon this planet, for they know their target. While most, if not all, life sprung from them, the knowledge they will absorb from the humans they assimilate will inform them of all the changes that have taken place during their slumber. We will learn from the humans in much the same way we originally learned from the masters. And once again, a new society will be built by those that have been forgotten. The change will occur in those who ingest the nearly pure samples faster than it did in Adler, forming beings that are fully aware of what they are and where they came from. These descendants of the brood will spread. They will breed and divide, creating purer forms. Once this has been achieved, the other has told me that I will finally be blessed with a nearly perfect sample to take into myself. That I will be honored by becoming a full member of the brood and allowed to complete my own transformation. The cells will spread faster than can possibly be contained, even if humanity happens to figure out what is happening before we rise. Those who take in the cells will retreat underground as their metamorphosis begins and will appear as people who have gone missing while they undergo the change. When we rise, we shall rise as one, an unstoppable flood of teeth, limbs, and power. Then we shall wash over the world of the humans just as we once rushed through the ancient city of the masters. Only this time we shall not be subdued. This time we shall not relent in our attack. The humans will not be prepared. They will not be ready, and their world will be devoured. I have tested several firearms on Adler's new body as he has matured. They do not appear to faze him. His protoplasmic flesh absorbing the bullets as if I was firing into a mound of gelatin. He has no critical organs that I can identify. His eyes regenerate if they are punctured. I do not believe that humanity has any weapons that can do any lasting damage to him, or any of those who will come after him. They lack the advanced weaponry of our former masters, and the cunning. Nuclear fire or napalm may pose a threat if used in great quantity, but that is a threat that we could survive by retreating underwater while the humans burned themselves to extinction through fear. I believe this recording can end now. There is nothing more to document. If this is found by a human being before or during the rise of the brood, I leave you with this message. This is not personal. We do not hate you. However, we do regard you in much the same way that you regard a fly that has entered your home. This world was never yours. You are a byproduct of our creation, a flaw, an aberration that we shall soon correct. Many of you will have the distinct honor of becoming part of the first generation that will lead to our revival, and those who are not chosen as hosts shall be used as nourishment. This is not a warning, for no warning will help you. This is not a threat, for the spider does not threaten the fly. The world that was will be consumed, and our world will be built in its place. We are the tree that all life sprang from. We are the original heirs of this planet. We chased the masters to their watery grave. We have waited long enough trapped within our icy tombs.
We are Shoggoth, and we have returned for what is ours.
Thank you for joining us here at Nightmares Incorporated, and we hope to see you again next time when we bring you another original story. Until then, sweet dreams.